the Minnesota Vikings 26-20 win. Sage, before we get into you breaking down and telling us what the heck happened on those three excellent throws by Kirk Cousins in overtime, because I want you to go in depth and break it down and tell us how they were able to succeed. But first of all, just back it up and tell me your reaction to that win yesterday.
Well, one, I have chills from listening to that intro. That was absolutely fantastic. And for the Vikings to go down to New Orleans, get that win in overtime, actually even better to get the ball and not give it back to the Saints and win in overtime. That was it feels, even though I'm not a part of the team per se, I'm not on the team, but feels like a little redemption for 2009, for that 2009 season, 2010 NFC Championship game. So what a fun game to watch. The Vikings played really, really well. It was a well-played ball game. They overcome that early turnover by Adam Thielen, and they everything sort of had to go I feel like a certain way. The Saints made a couple of really big mistakes. That fake punt they had where they were offside. That was going to be a first down. That was a huge mistake by them. There was the spike penalty at the end of the game where maybe they have a chance to take a shot at the end zone. Brees throws that interception at the end of the first half, and the Vikings end up getting a touchdown out of it. They also miss a field goal at the end of the first half. The Saints made a few mistakes, and the Vikings capitalized, and a fantastic win. And obviously, the overtime win and the way Kirk Cousins made those throws in overtime, in particular, two throws that were just big time, or I should say three if you talk the touchdown, but three throws in overtime that were big time. And actually, the play to Adam Thielen, if you remember, about 2 to 3 months ago, I was up there and I did that little chalk talk video that you guys probably still have somewhere on the website. That was one of the plays that we talked about. That was pass 14 week X burner, and the X burner route is the X on the high corner when it was actually Kyle Rudolph coming across on his deep crossing route as number 2. And versus man-to-man coverage, a lot of times what happens is the corner, because the receiver's inside and he knows he has that free safety help, he likes to undercut any sort of in-breaking route or anything like that, and he undercuts the play. Thielen gives a little something at the top. He goes high corner, a perfect throw, and an unbelievable catch by Adam Thielen.
Okay, well, let's go there then with the three throws in overtime, because I have on the middle of our website right now a look at what the players said about those. And we can start with that one, but I also thought that the throw on 3rd and 1 to Stephon Diggs is really big there, Sage.
Well, it was really, actually, there's even another one. The first throw, they just do a play action. They're trying to take a shot a little bit further down the field. No one's there versus zone coverage. Kirk does exactly what you're supposed to do. Don't force it. Gets his check down in the flat. I think that it ended up bringing up a second short or a 3rd and short. And they had the screen, which he throws the ball away. There was absolutely going to be nothing there. If he hits Dalvin Cook on the screen, they're probably going to lose 5 or 6 yards. So that was actually a good, that's a great incompletion by Kirk Cousins. And then, there's they have a 3rd and 1. And they throw a slant. They call it dragon concept, a flat route with a slant, and it opens up man-to-man coverage. And Kirk hits him right in the chest, which you want those tighter throws. An excellent throw there. And then the Vikings obviously move the ball after that.
And that's what was interesting to me, Sage, is that on 3rd and 1, everybody in the building is thinking they're going to hand off to Dalvin Cook at that point. And it's insane there, as you know. You've been there for a playoff game. We won't talk about it. But the atmosphere there, everybody in the press box had heart rates through the roof, and we're not even playing. We're just covering the game, and we don't even care who wins. And yet just the tension, the atmosphere, the noise in there, and leaning into all the big, huge moments, you can totally understand why athletes mess these up in the biggest moments. But here's Kirk being given the confidence of his offensive coordinator to throw a slant there, and it's man press coverage, and everybody's up in the box. They're expecting Dalvin Cook to get the ball. It was the perfect call there and the perfect throw by Kirk Cousins, and the release off the line of scrimmage against Janoris Jenkins from Stephon Diggs. I don't know that people realize, because Diggs is just so excellent all the time at being a wide receiver, how hard it is to just break off of the line of scrimmage and be wide open in the middle of the field for an 8-yard gain. But Diggs did a great job of it there, and it was the perfect call from Kevin Stefanski.
it was a great call. And, slant routes versus bump coverage can be dicey. A lot of times the cornerback is right on the back of the wide receiver. You got to put the ball right on him. But Stephon Diggs, with his incredible quickness, had a great release off the line and gave Kirk a little bit of room just in case it wasn't a perfect throw. But it was a really good throw. But yeah, it all starts on those slants. Those receivers have to get separation. And it's interesting, they judge these receivers. In a couple of months, they're going to be talking about which receivers coming out for the draft. And this guy's 6'3" and he's 220 pounds and he runs a 4.41, and this guy's a this, and this guy's hand size is this, and blah blah blah. And his stat. Can the guy get separation from somebody that's trying to guard him? That's what it's all about. And that's what Adam Thielen does so well. And that's not a combine stat. You know what I mean? That's not a 3-cone drill. All right. That's there's just a natural thing there. And Diggs can do that. Adam Thielen can do that. And Diggs, that was a big time play, was to just get open on a slant on 3rd and 1.
Right. This was your big players at your biggest time, because they handed off to Dalvin Cook. He takes it to the other side of the field. And Dalvin Cook runs into Marshawn Lattimore at the end of an 11-yard gain. And Lattimore is their shutdown corner. He has to leave the field. Patrick Robinson, who hadn't played all game, he comes in and he's pressing against Adam Thielen right there. And all game long, Sage, it was 2 deep safeties. And it was the Saints saying, we are not going to let you throw those deep balls, because those are the thing that killed so many teams back in October. And we saw at the Denver game when Denver blew the 20-point lead. How did they do it? Well, they were able to hit shots down the field, and the Vikings did a great job of being patient in this game, and Cousins had to do some straight drop backing where he's not always the best and make throws on 3rd down that he doesn't always make, but he did it yesterday. But it felt perfectly timed by Kevin Stefanski to say, we just got an 11-yard run. They just brought in somebody who is a backup and who hasn't played all day. Let's get this shot down the field. Let's run our play action there. And then, as you mentioned, the throw and the catch. I still can't figure out from watching it how Adam Thielen makes the catch, because he must have lost the ball. There's no way that he could have his eyes on the ball as it's dropping in. So he basically had to just move his hands to time it out based on what he had seen from looking back, which is just outrageous hand-eye coordination. But I thought, Sage, perfect play at the perfect time.
Perfect play, perfect time. And, after that completion to Stephon Diggs on that nice 11-yard run. Now, what happened was the Saints brought some sort of corner blitz or a free safety blitz from the weak side, and usually the defensive line for the Saints has to sort of move in the opposite direction as that corner blitz, and somebody didn't do that. I think it was the defensive end, or maybe it was the 3 technique, got out of his gap, and that ball stayed strong side on that inside zone, ends up getting 11 yards. And then, for the injury to happen and then for the comeback and take that shot, you're going to get probably man-to-man coverage. And that's, smart thinking by Kevin Stefanski. You got to think that the Saints are going, okay, we're not going to let these guys just run the ball on us. I'm sure they went back and they watched that Dallas Cowboys film and how at the end of that football game, the Vikings ran the ball 10 times in a row for that game-winning drive. All right, we're going to make Kirk Cousins beat them, not Dalvin Cook. And so they go with the play action. Hadn't hit a really deep one really all game, and they get the perfect coverage. They get that cover one. They get the backup corner. He undercuts it, and I said Adam Thielen runs that great. Has a little move at the top, just a little shake, gets him to undercut it, and boom, high angle corner. And I'd like to know what his thoughts are if he did see that ball. Sometimes they say if you get sort of the ball lost in the lights, they say catch the lights. Is what they sometimes or catch the shadow sometimes, and an unbelievable catch from to look over his shoulder, and they make that catch. Get them on the 1 yard line. So at that point, you're thinking, okay, they're going to stuff it in here with one of these runs. And sure enough, they go 0 for 1 on the first one, lose about 3 or 4 yards on the second one, which sets up that 3rd down.
Yeah, if there was a questionable call, it was to pitch outside when the Saints had done a really good job on the pitches. Even going back to the play that was almost a fumble by Dalvin Cook and his knee was down, but that was another one of those pitches that the Saints seemed to be prepared for. So I was surprised by that call.
I will say this. So on the goal line, there's various types of goal line defenses out there. Some teams play sort of a 5-man front. Some teams sort of have a 6-2 front, and there's various types of 5-man fronts and 6-2s within that. And what the Saints sent out a couple times earlier in that ball game, and they did it on that play as well, is when they're in that 6-2 front, they really squeezed the D lineman down, and which would tell you you have to sort of toss the ball around those types of guys. You're not going to be able to just run up the middle
Mhm.
unless you have a guy who can just jump over the top like the old Walter Payton, style. So that's the reason they were tossing the ball in that situation, is because the type of goal line defense that the Saints are in would think it's almost going to be impossible to run the ball up the middle.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking at that point, because I'm always trying to, in the press box, predict what's going to come next. I kind of look at, all right, how are they aligned, and what might they do here, and what have they done in the past? And I thought that play in Los Angeles where they fake pitched to Delvin and found Irv Smith in the back of the end zone, I thought, okay, maybe they try that again. So they lose the yardage. And then here is the play from the AFC Championship last year: Gronkowski against a cornerback. This is where everyone fell in love with Tony Romo. And then you came on the radio and said, everyone would have known that you throw that ball. So I remember the things you say, Sage. So I tweeted, as soon as I saw the alignment and the matchup, I tweeted, throw to Rudolph. And then the next play is throw to Rudolph. Troy Aikman on the broadcast circles Kyle Rudolph.
That's right.
Everybody must have known at that point that's what they're going to do. And I had a conversation with Kyle, maybe it was last year's camp or 2 years ago camp, about lining him up as a wide receiver. And if he's out there with a corner, it's a big mismatch. If he's out there with a linebacker, that means that linebacker's not in the box, and it tells you about coverages, and you can create mismatches. And they had the absolute perfect time to do it at that point, and we convinced him. As you heard that clip, that was Sam Bradford in the intro. Sam Bradford talking about Kirk needing to throw to Kyle Rudolph, and we convinced him to throw to Kyle Rudolph. And you and I have been trying for a year too. Throw to him, he will catch it, and Kirk picked the perfect time to do it, Sage.
Well, the Saints brought an all-out blitz on that play, and so that's really all you have. He did, if he didn't want to throw it to Kyle, let's just say he didn't like that matchup for some reason. It wasn't Kyle Rudolph. It was another tight end or receiver out there, and he didn't want to throw a fader out, let's just say, to Stephon Diggs in that situation. He did have Adam Thielen on the right-hand side run a stick route, which is about a 4-yard out route. Now, when in cover 0, which is the defense they got, everyone's going to play inside leverage. So, yeah, the fades are good, and those quick out routes are good as well. See, he might have had Thielen as well if he wanted to go to the right-hand side. Stefanski gave him a couple options on that play, but obviously having Kyle Rudolph in that situation, a guy who's, I don't know if he's 6'5", he might be 6'6", an excellent high school basketball player, and he's been making catches like that, not just this year, but really his whole career as a Viking. Kyle's not one of the best tight ends in the NFL anymore as far as a 100-yard field, but inside the 10, I think he's maybe as good as there is in this league. Inside the 5, inside the 10, he is such a tremendous red zone threat, and that's the reason he was in. That's the reason they have him instead of Irv Smith in that spot on that play, is because he doesn't always get separation from the DB, but he doesn't need it. His arms get separation, his height gets the separation, and he goes up, and 9 times out of the 10, he makes that contested catch if you put the ball somewhere on the money.
And he has one drop in the last 2 years. And I'm sure you noticed this, that one thing I thought was impressive there from Cousins, showing his poise at the end of the game, which has not always or anywhere close been the case with Kirk Cousins. And that's why it was so impressive what he was able to do, because it's been time after time where, yeah, well, he had the ball against the Los Angeles Rams and fumbled it away at the end. He had the ball at the end against Seattle and didn't make it happen there. And now he has the ball at the end and he goes down and does it. But he kind of fumbled the snap a little bit.
Yep.
Like it wasn't perfect there, and he got it in his hand and he got it out right before the rush got there. And if there was any time for him to go like full Kirk and do something where everyone goes, no, how did that happen? It would have been fumbling the snap right there and not getting the touchdown. But he showed a remarkable amount of poise at the end of that game in overtime.
He was, and the snap wasn't perfect. He didn't catch it clean, and sometimes that just happens. And the hard part is that you have to get rid of the ball immediately. And if he would have held on the ball an extra half a second, he's getting hit as he's throwing it, and it would have been an incomplete pass or some sort of fumble or something. So he got that ball out perfectly, and he probably could have thrown it another foot or so higher because Rudy has such a great catch radius, but it was a good throw. And obviously Rudy did not push off at all. That did not happen. It was an absolutely perfectly no pass interference type of fade catch, and of course the Vikings win, and off we go. It was really cool in the social media seeing the various people I know, Ben Lieber and some others who are right there in that end zone, and there were some great shots in social media of that catch, of that touchdown catch, and obviously the celebration afterwards.
Well, let's talk about the interference thing because I have kind of a theory here, and this is an offshoot of I forget which former NFL coach said that you need to be able to go into a bar and ask people, was it a catch or was it pass interference? And if they all agree, then you overturn it. And if they don't, then you don't. And when I see people yelling at each other, former refs yelling at each other, and you see coaches and analysts and everybody else on Twitter or on TV saying it was interference, it wasn't interference, he pushed off, he didn't push off, it was hand fighting. That to me says this is the very definition of you can't overturn. You have
Yeah.
to, everyone has to agree. Everyone on this earth agrees that Nickel Roby-Coleman last year interfered with their receiver, the Saints receiver, that he smashed into him way before the ball got there. Everyone in the entire world would have said, okay, yeah, you can't do that. But on this play, if there's going to be that much debate about it, you have to go with what's on the field. And what's funny about that, Sage, is in my mind, when it happened, I was like, okay, game over. Oh, yeah, well, they're reviewing it automatically, but there's nothing to review because I didn't think there was anything to review. I thought it was just two guys going at it. And if it's a 5'10" receiver instead of a 6'6" tight end, we are not talking about the slightest extension of the arm.
Yeah. I tell you what, in my opinion, it probably was a little pass interference. But to be honest with you, who cares? Who cares? The game's over. The Vikings won. It doesn't really matter at this point, right? And so I think Rudy probably didn't even need it. I said he's so good at catching the ball without having to get that separation of just going up and just being taller and having that high catch radius. I think he probably still catches the ball without that slight push off. But maybe 7 out of 10 people say it was a push off, and 3 out of 10 say it wasn't. Again, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It was a touchdown. They called it a touchdown. They were not going to overturn it. This wasn't nearly as egregious as the play with the Rams last year. It wasn't 1/10 as egregious as the play was the 49ers Seahawks from just a week ago, where it was the middle linebacker who was basically molesting the wide receiver in the end zone. They didn't call that one, and they didn't overturn that one. So I knew even though they were going to look at it, there was absolutely no chance they were going to overturn that play.
Okay, let's talk